brain has an ability to make paths. Like it has a natural ability to heal itself.
Yeah.
We have, as nature, have a natural ability to heal ourselves physically.
Yeah.
So why would it not make sense if we can do it physically? Why can't we do it mentally? And I know we can, because I've seen it demonstrated. I've seen it within myself, and it's coming from the place of homeostasis in a way, right? Where the body is always trying to balance itself. Our minds are constantly trying to balance itself too. What gets in the way is the extra thinking and layers of heaviness on one side of the pendulum that isn't very supportive, right, of the balancing piece. But the minute we realize that what's going on, we have an opportunity again of sort of letting go of that, and then the balance comes up again.
Välkommen till podden Human Change med Daniel Magnusson. Fastnar du ofta i tankar kring oro, stress och irritation? Tror du att allt beror på att det är fel på dig? Då vill jag välkomna dig till podden som guidar dig till förståelse om hur vi människor fungerar egentligen. Genom denna förståelse kan vi leva ett liv fullt av kärlek och harmoni. Ditt ljus och hopp när allt verkar mörkt och hopplöst. Så låt nu Daniel guida dig till den stillhet vi alla letar efter. Där slutstationen är välmående och glädje. Lyssna och njut.
Du lyssnar på Human Change med mig, Daniel Magnusson, and I will switch directly to English because today I have a lovely gentleman coming directly via the virtual internet from Canada, Vancouver. That is Rick Ruppenthal, who is a coach and also have 30 years of experience as a paramedic. And today, bringing back his wisdom and knowledge and helping people to the community of people in service. So, welcome, Rick. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Daniel. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So, yeah, it's really nice to have you here. So, before we started, we were talking a little bit about like what should we be focusing on, and when we're recording this, it's tomorrow is going to be the 1st November, and then we have this November and the focus on men's health in prostate cancer and so on. But there is also another kind of big epidemic through the whole world about suicide and so on. So, and you shared also about the ad you did see on TV, so we can look into that really short, I think. So, so tell me, you've been working as a paramedic for 30 years, and
yes.
And when you said like, yeah, but I never suffered from PTSD, because a lot of people usually do that when they've been being first responders, because of all things. It's easy to believe and see that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of a paradigm around that, because I remember even in the training, the trainers, innocently would sort of tell people, like, be aware, this is going to be a tough job. You're going to see a lot of things. You're going to feel a lot of things. And, it was never characterized as post-traumatic stress before. Like we called it burnout, and things like that. And they kind of said, it's not a question of if you're going to get it. It's when you're going to get it. Mm-hmm. So it almost sets you up for it. And so there was several things I noticed in over the 30 years is the variety of different experiences in the emergency services. Like we're all doing the same kind of calls. We had, high intensity, high traumatic events. We had not so traumatic events. There's a lot of good calls that are not necessarily, car accidents and things like that. We do a lot of transferring of ill patients from one hospital to another. We're taking them from their home and taking them to the hospital, very low key, no lights and sirens. But Hollywood always, gives us the lights and sirens show.
More action,
and people are interested. And I know about you or your listeners, but I do know myself when I see an accident on a highway, everybody slows down to, it's like, to see what's going on, right? Because there's a curiosity around it. Well, when you're in the field, there's a different view, like you're right in it. And I noticed so many different people having different experiences. Like some were like myself who were going from call to call to call. And I'm not saying I was ever not affected by a call, but it never lingered. It never stuck with me. Every once in a while I get a flashback, something will provoke a memory and I'll remember a call, and it'll come up in the surface and I'll go, yeah, that was a pretty tough call. That was a pretty tough call. And then it would kind of go away. Others it wouldn't. And to combat that, people took up the habits of drinking or taking drugs or something to numb the feelings that were coming up from what they had experienced. And then eventually they called it post-traumatic stress disorder. And lately they're starting to now lean it towards an actual brain injury. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of different things that are being characterized, through the world of the psychologist and the psychiatrist. But I always found it interesting. If it was really the job, then why aren't more of us damaged? Mm. Like what is that? And so I became really curious when I left the service to try and figure out some things around that. So if I can come up with whatever it is, maybe I can create a program and teach that to new recruits. So they don't have to hear, oh, by the way, it's not when you or if you get post-traumatic stress, it's when you get it. Kind of setting up the whole scenario of you're doomed.
Yeah.
And I've been recently reading some posts from paramedics about how they're saying, when I got into this job, it was so much fun. 10 years from now, it's not so fun. So like the calls haven't really changed as far as acuities are concerned, but what has? Like something has shifted. And I got really curious about that. And that's when I started looking into Google, searching for different answers, and came across the work of Michael Neal in his TED Talk. And he had set up some slides and things like that. And everything sounded really familiar to me. And then, of course, he started to drop some names, and I read some of his books, and he started to point towards the work of Sydney Banks. And so as he kept dropping names, I started picking up these books and reading. And literally it's funny because the title of Sydney Banks's book, the one that really resonated with me, is called The Missing Link. And it truly was, for me, the missing link to, okay, why did I sort of, I'm just going to use these labels, survive and thrive in this work while others aren't? And the answers were in that book. And so I really got deep into it. I took some workshops and took the apprenticeship program through them, because there was something there. There was something there that needed to be shared. That suffering was optional. Like, you could get back to that first honeymoon phase of being in the job where everything is fresh and new. That's on offer. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It had nothing to do with the length, it had nothing to do with the work. It really has to do with what that book was pointing to. And that was having an understanding of where your experiences come from.
Yeah. Makes it such a difference when we start to see it, because it's a big shift, like really to start to see how, as I say, how we function, how our system actually is functioning, and compared to what we believe and what we are taught in general.
In general. Yeah. And that's where we innocently get wrapped up in, if I believe that the work, the career will damage me, I'm going to be living towards that narrative. Right? I'm going to be consciously looking for evidence to support myself that I'm breaking down, that things are not working. And oh, geez, I got irritable. There's more evidence there, right? I got a little bit of depression. Oh, there's more evidence. So if we keep buying into these narratives, thinking that they're true, for me, there have always been self-fulfilled prophecies.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see more and more of that creep into our common language. And I was sharing recently about a commercial on, because my main project is called the Unbroken Hero Project, and it really points to the fact that you're not broken in spite of what people have been telling you. And I can't tell you how many paramedics have come to me, when I listen to them, and they basically say, it's like, my doctor says I'm damaged, I'm broken. I need to learn, I need to learn to live with my diagnosis. So rather than describing you, what's happening, it's now defining the individual. I have this, therefore. And I go, it doesn't have to be that way. And I said, like, if you hang around with me long enough, we're going to have a conversation. But the conversation starts with, you're not broken. Nobody's ever told me that. Well, I'm telling you that. Right? Because we live in a thought-created world. We're always living or taking actions based on the beliefs that we're thinking are true in the moment, are thinking in the moment. So why not start there and see what happens? Let's explore that. I'm not saying you need to believe everything I'm saying, but what a wonderful experiment to do. And just explore, okay, well, if I'm not broken, then, so what is going on?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
what are these thoughts going on in my head?
Yeah, and also, well, it's like, it sounds too big, too good to be true, or it sounds too simple, and all these kind of things that I can hear. And it's like, yeah, but let's play with it, and if it wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, exactly. But yeah, just let it be, and explore and be open for it.
That button's in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's in the way. It's really good to have it to sit on, but not otherwise. Yeah, and I think it's because we are, as you say, the language that we are using is creating an illusion of and a belief that there are a certain way in life, that this is a stressful job, this is a stressful situation, or this is tough, this is hard, this is fun, this is loving, and so on. So we're using, like, I don't know, these kind of machines where you put in letters and then you have, like, you put it on a dymo, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like we're walking around them, labeling things.
Yeah.
And not only things and situations, we're labeling ourselves also.
100%.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead.
there was a really interesting example I saw demonstrated. A friend of mine shared me a video of her, a young child opening up a book, looking at a book, and the book was expressions. So there was a picture of somebody expressing something like happy, sad, all these different expressions. Now this child, I believe, was somewhere around the 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old age, right? And so the parent was going through the book and they were going, "They're sad, demonstrate sad." So the child was looking at the picture, then demonstrate, like mimicking the photo, and then labeling it, "That's the picture of sad." Flip the page. That's the picture of happy. Show happy. So it's like, big smile on the face. It's like, wow. Like, I understand why they might have put the book together and things like that. But if we're starting to show what these certain feelings are supposed to look like at that age, right? So they're pulling that right through the narrative now as they grow up, right? This is my sad face. This is my happy face, right? And so it's like, that's really interesting. I have no idea, what will ultimately happen about that, but that's how we kind of do it, right? We grow up looking at people in front of us. We feel that they're their authorities, and if they say that that's, it's like money, you have to work hard to get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that in my, so I have to work hard. I'm not getting it. I must work harder.
Yeah.
And I was reminded many years ago of a line. I forget who the original quote came from. "If you tell a lie enough times, it soon becomes the truth." And it seems to me we tend to do that with ourselves, right? I believe what I am thinking and seeing is to be the truth.
Yeah, we start to believe it so much.
Yeah. And then I act accordingly.
Yeah. And I think we need to have in mind also, I know you and me, Rick, we know that, and just emphasizing for listeners that we people do this innocently. Like, the people around us, they do it innocently. Like, yes, it can be good to show my child a book, how you look when you're happy. This is that. So, because we believe that, kids needs to understand that. But at the same time, we know that because they started smiling when you were smiling. They started crying if you were looking angry. We know. We don't need to train to be happy, and so on. Like, okay, let's have a boot camp on how to be happy, or how to be sad or angry, or I don't know. And
well, we call them workshops now.
Yeah, exactly. It's not boot camp. Yeah, it's a workshop. No, it's a play shop. It's a play shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like starting to be, and this comes, of course, with our own upbringing, what we have learned, and all the beliefs that we have, like, oh yeah, $10, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you should be thankful. and say, oh wow, that's a lot. Oh, okay, this is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's money. We don't need to put a label on it.
No.
And we can be grateful. And it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $10 or 10 million. Be grateful.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And another thing, what you said also about the how when people meeting authorities, and in this case maybe doctors, saying like, okay, giving a diagnose, and then also saying, yeah, you are damaged and you're broken, or you will need to learn to live with this, and it doesn't matter what kind of illness or if it's a, I don't know, diagnose it is. And I heard this before many years back. It's like, let them give you the diagnose, but never buy into the prognose. And
the
I think,
yeah,
because then we're like, oh, okay, because they oh, you have this disease. Well, I'm gonna give you. Let me see in this, and then flipping some pages. What does Google says? Well, 2 to 3 years.
On average.
On average. And that's, oh, is that good or bad? An average? I mean, and of course, innocently, because that's what people are usually wondering, if they're getting a disease. Okay, how bad is it? And the bad thing is usually like it's a short lifespan, and so on.
A friend of mine just recently got diagnosed with prostate cancer. He phoned me over the weekend, and which was a couple of days ago, and shared that news with me, because I had gone through prostate cancer. I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and went through a radical surgery, and happy to report that there's no cancer cells in me, but you know, it's a bit of it's a shock, right, when you hear the C word, cancer.
Of course.
And because what we label cancer as is like, oh my goodness, this is a deadly disease. Yes, it is a deadly disease. The thing with prostate cancer is it is very treatable, which is, thank goodness for guys, when caught early. But it was interesting what he told me was the language his doctor was using was, you have a very aggressive type of prostate cancer. And I said to him, what does he mean by aggressive? And he says, I don't know. But right when you heard the word, Daniel, aggressive, you immediately have your own theories around what aggressive, right? And I said, one thing I've learned going through the cancer regime is to really get clarification on these words. Like when people put a subjective word like aggressive or bad, or, you know, like, what does that really mean? You know, yes, it's aggressive. Does that mean we have to deal with it in the next 2 weeks, or is it 6 months, or right? And in my case, it was, no, you're okay, right? It's like, we're going to get this done in 6 months, you know, and then you'll be fine, kind of a deal. And it's like, okay, good. Now I understand more. But if I walked out of that office with my definition, I would have said, you know, my wife, we better update our insurance policy here, or our will, or whatever we need to do, right? Get our life in order. But, no, it's very important.
Let's book a trip to Mexico right away. I mean, to have some fun. Yeah, and it's tragic, and hope that it goes well for your friend, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. And
but it's our language, like, you know, and this is what ends up, we don't think about it at the time, because we're stuck in, oh Jesus, I got this. But it's just as innocently as the trainers saying to the first responders, you know, this is a tough job. it's not necessarily a tough job.
Oh. And what does that mean? Tough.
And what does tough mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Is it long hours, or is it
exactly.
is it heavy lifting, or
Yes, there's a lot of heavy lifting, and people are getting heavier. But there's a lot of fun and enjoyment and miracles that you get to be present for, So it's like I've seen some miraculous things, including births, right? Which can be traumatic too. You're kind of a thing, but
of course.
But there's so much that's going on there, and it's not necessarily damaging. Yes, you have feelings, and the more you know and understand how those feelings are created and how your experiences are created, you have a better way of dealing with it. Knowing that, yes, it's going to hurt for a bit, and it's real. It happened, but it happened last week. And one of the things I often share, one of the key lessons is leaving the last call behind when you do the next one, because you can't take the next call into the next one. If you're thinking about the last call you had, you're not focused on what's in front of you. So, it's interesting. Intuitively, we teach how to be present with first responders. We teach to be in the now. We don't say that. We want you to be in the now. We don't say that. But we talk about holding on to baggage and trying to release it. But we do it in a very contextual way, not in any, well, what are some of the tools that I can use? Like, we don't get into the deeper understanding of what's really going on. We know that it's beneficial. We know about being in the zone or being in flow. And we understand that when you're in those states, particularly in a high acuity call, like something that's very traumatic, where we focused on the work in front of us, we can go through that with no thought. And then it's at the end where we all get around the back of our ambulances and at the hospitals, and we say, man, how did we ever get through that? That was a tough call. Like, there was so much going on. How did we manage that? And nobody can really put a finger on it other than we just did the work. There was no thinking. So there's some magic and something to look at and point to, that all those things are on offer all through your career. These are just not one-offs. So I think, we got a lot more work to be done for sure, but it's not helping the cause when we start to add extra labels now. Things like, you are damaged, you now have a brain injury, you're broken, you're gonna have to manage it yourself, you're gonna have to live with it now for the rest of your life. To me, those are almost like death sentences. It's saying, well, I guess there's no hope.
Yeah, and just to point out to the people who are listening, we are talking about not physical damages and so on, and brain damages or anything. We're talking about the formless, the one, as I say, the one who we are. That cannot be damaged, because it's, first of all, it's formless. How can you damage anything that is formless?
Yes.
Right. It's a spiritual energy, and it's impossible to damage that. But then science, they look into the brain and see different kind of activities and think that maybe something is damaged there.
And yet there's studies around plasticity. For the term, right? Sort of like brain has an ability to remake paths. Like, it has a natural ability to heal itself.
Yeah.
we have, as nature, have a natural ability to heal ourselves physically.
Yeah.
So why would it not make sense if we can do it physically? Why can't we do it mentally? And I know we can, because I've seen it demonstrated. I've seen it within myself, and it's coming from the place of homeostasis, in a way, right, where the body is always trying to balance itself. Our minds are constantly trying to balance itself too. What gets in the way is the extra thinking and layers of heaviness on one side of the pendulum that isn't very supportive, right, of the balancing piece. But the minute we realize that what's going on, we have an opportunity again of sort of letting go of that, and then the balance comes up again.
Yeah.
And so for me, understanding what's going on, and we've got the best built-in barometer for that, and that's our feelings. When I get into a low mood or low feelings, I know I'm putting a lot of heaviness on one side of the pendulum. And if my nature is to be balanced, something has to give. I don't need to, it's not adding anything like positive thing. I need to be more positive or whatever to try and balance that off. It's really about dumping the load off of one side of the scale.
Yep.
And it'll naturally balance itself out. So it's there. It's always been there, which for me is the good news.
Definitely. And that is a visual view of how it works, and then people finding strategies to even it out, to balance it, and when they starting focusing on something else, they drop the weight on the other side.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, it seems like, I will do that activity again, because then it's even the pendulum out and I'm balanced again.
But there's effort in that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Because if for me to balance the scale out means I have to put pressure on the other side to lift it up, depending on the weight that's on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's effort. But in reality, this whole thing is effortless.
Yeah.
When I realized that I was the guy that put the stuff on the weight anyways, like on the scale. That's my shit. Oh, okay. It's like, okay, I don't need it. No, I had this crazy little dream. Can I share this dream for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It's an airline. Okay. And the airline just happened to be Wellness Airlines. Okay. So, and it's like every all-inclusive vacation, right? Everything's taken care of for you, right? So when you get to the destination, you don't have to worry about anything. You know, the food's taken care of, the lodging, everything's taken care of. But you have to get on Wellness Airlines. So this guy's coming up the ramp, and he's just struggling to get up the ramp. And the stewardess stops him, and he goes, "What?" She says, "You have to drop it." Drop what? You have to drop your baggage. You can't take baggage onto the plane. So this guy was carrying a bunch of baggage. And of course, obviously, it's a metaphor for the stuff he's been dragging around all his life. He says, I gotta drop my baggage. Yeah, you don't need your baggage here. This is Wellness Airlines. And so the guy says, oh, okay. I just let go of it. Yeah, everything will be taken care of when you land on the other side. Oh, okay. I don't need it. So he drops his baggage, and then he starts walking in. And then my dreams are so crazy. Anyways, the stewardess stops him again, and he goes, "What? What now? I dropped my baggage." He says, "Empty your pockets." What do you mean, empty my pockets? You have issues in there. Issues? Yes, you have issues of money. You have issues of relationships. You have issues. All these issues are stuffed in your pocket. You need to empty those too. Okay, I'll get rid of my issues too, kind of. But really, we're the ones that fill the bags. We're the ones that fill our pockets full of these things that we think are so important to ourselves that serve no purpose at all in our wellness program. Absolutely no purpose. And yet we choose to try and sneak them onto the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only reason we do it is that we believe that we have to.
Yes. They're important stuff. They define me in a way.
Yeah.
Innocently, this is what, and I know it myself, even though I know, and I've experienced different things at points of my time. I've caught myself holding on to those issues or my baggage, thinking that, it defines me in some way. But no, none of it defines me. It just describes maybe something that's happened in my past, but it has nothing to do with the present moment. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And the more I realized that, the more it got easier and easier to let go of the baggage, let go of the issues, and just allow more free thought to flow through, and just kind of see, okay, well, what really is on offer here? What is here in the present moment for me?
Who will I be without that Hawaii shirt on the vacation? I need my shirts, I need my shorts, and so on. And that can represent anything. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good. So could you please share the about the ad you did see on TV recently?
Yeah. So November with an M is about men's health. And I particularly wanted to focus on men's mental health, because one of the stats that really surprises me is that 60 men commit suicide every hour in the world. And by the time this podcast is over, like, when you think every minute somebody has decided that death was more attractive than living. And I've had some really kind of sort of deep conversations with colleagues and friends around that. And, the whole notion of, what if we truly believe that, we're always operating from the level of our thinking or level of understanding in the moment, thinking that it is real, then what's going on in their minds at that moment is real, very, very real. So real enough that there's no hope, right? There's no turnaround. The only action that they feel is appropriate at that moment is to end their life. And both me and you know that that's not necessarily the truth. That there are alternatives to that thinking path. And we were talking about how we innocently grab onto labels and how narratives start to change, and we buy into some narratives. And recently I've been seeing an advertisement. Actually, with this morning was for a company. It was a clothing company, but the ad had nothing to do with clothing. And the ad was titled, "All is Beautiful in Living and in Dying." And it was about a lady that had terminal cancer, and she was going through a medical assisted death, a medical assisted induced death. And that
means that you actually get help. I guess I want to clarify that for people, especially maybe Swedish people, and like, okay, what does that mean? That you get help to kill yourself.
Yes, yeah. And it's done legally. In 2016, Canada officially deemed that as long as a doctor and you meet certain criteria, so you have a terminal disease that has absolutely no chance of improvement, you can opt to have a celebration of life and be able to enjoy your last few moments rather than being in a hospital with tubes and filled with painkillers. Now that law is changed now that it also includes disabilities. Now, I don't know the whole details of what the disabilities, but I'm assuming they have to be severe enough, much like the terminal cancer, that the quality of life, there's no chance of improvements, and they could be in a lot of pain and various other things.
ALS, I guess, also.
Yeah, some could be. Yeah, advanced Parkinson's, and I'm not sure. But obviously something that provides no hope or no future. And while they still have some quality of their life, they can choose to have an assisted death, and then create a ceremony. And that's what the ad was. It was about this lady that had created this ceremony, and she narrated it before she died. And so there's sound bites of her talking about, how life was so beautiful for her. Why couldn't her death be just as beautiful? I mean, it's very poetic. It was very interesting. So when I looked into it, because I was curious, I mean, from my point of view, I still have a lot of curiosity around individuals that commit suicide. And as a paramedic, I've seen lots of suicides, more than I ever wanted to. And so now I understand that next year they're going to include mental illness in the mix. I just think, personally, this is my opinion, it's a slippery slope that, now we're buying into the narrative that mental illness is now, again, I don't know what the criteria is going to be, but I don't care what it is. Knowing what I know today, there is always hope. There's always hope. And it may look like you're at the end, and you've been told all these different things. But if we keep building this narrative, and if we tell a lie enough times, it soon becomes the truth, and we keep acting on that truth, I think we're just opening up the door to a lot of innocent people that don't necessarily have to leave this earth that early.
Yeah, and it's so sad, both that they are planning to do this, of course, as you just shared, but and also, of course, people suffering so much that they need to, as they feel, do a suicide.
And and I could understand. I mean, there were times when I felt quite low. About midway through my career, I blew my back out on a heavy lift, and the doctor said I needed to find another career. And in that moment, I thought my life was over. It was sort of like, okay, this is a job that I loved. It was my calling. I obviously identified myself with it, and all of a sudden it was taken away from me. And I know that for about 3 days, I was really in a dark place. But I had enough of a training and understanding of where my experiences would come that I realized, oh my goodness, this job really affected me. I really got caught up in the work, and I realized it was defining me, like in a bad way. It's like
yeah.
So, and then, and you talk about a narrative, my doctor says, well, like you'll never be able to lift that kind of stuff anymore and stuff like that. So I was in constant pain. I couldn't stand for long periods of time. I couldn't sit for long periods of time, and nothing was comfortable. And of course, they were pumping with some drugs and things like that to kind of mitigate some of it. But I started to take physio, and I had a really good physio trainer. He was really wise in what he was pointing towards me. And at one point I said to him, I says, can you tell me exactly what's going on with my back? Like, like when I'm doing these exercises or when I'm walking, am I hurting myself? Because I felt pain. I felt pain. The pain was real. And he said to me, no, actually, you're not damaging your back at all. All you're doing is you're just rubbing up against the scar tissue. So the nerves or whatever is going on down there, that's what's causing the pain. And I said, okay, so by me walking, I am not doing any more damage. No. Well, that gave me permission. Right away, my narrative changed. It gave me hope that I can continue to walk in spite of my pain, and maybe something might happen.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I ended up doing. I started walking till I couldn't tolerate it anymore, and then I just stopped. It was time to rest. And I kept doing that. And literally, Daniel, within a week, something snapped. Where I would have quit a lot sooner, I just kept, and all of a sudden there's like something snapped and there was no pain. It's like, what just happened? It's like, and I kind of, whether something, my scar tissue finally broke or something or other, but I got instant relief. And then, I started walking further, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers. Then I started running and I got back to work. If I had bought into the narrative in the beginning that I was damaged, and I couldn't go back to work, and that I'd continue to suffer for the rest of my life, it would have been a different story today.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have been talking.
Yeah.
I think there's something in there about mental illness there too.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just thinking, like, you got permission that, yes, the signals is telling you should not walk. Like, it's hurting. And that's that's the whole purpose of the body, is interpreting, like in this case, some kind of injury. And sending signals like, don't walk. And that's why it hurt. And then I guess this is me, of course, just guessing. Like, maybe it's like, hey, maybe it's no problem. We don't need to pay attention. We warned this guy so long now, but he's still walking. Listens sometimes and stops, but more or less he's still walking. So let's skip the signal.
Yeah,
it's not needed.
Yeah,
and it started healing in some sense, right?
It did. And is it, but do I still get back pain? Yeah, occasionally.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a signal.
Yeah.
It's a signal that my body needs a little bit of a rest. Yeah. And our minds work exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Right. So when I get busy thinking, when I get anxiety or feeling overwhelmedness, or sad, it has nothing to do with what's going on outside me. It's just an indicator to the quality of my thinking in the moment. And I go, oh, okay. And much like I started to understand what was going on with my back, I started to understand and what was going on with my brain, my mind, and started to experiment with it, like me walking further, right? I wonder if I just stopped paying attention to this thought, what would happen? And started to really notice and pay attention to how it flows, how I really have no control over my thinking of the thought that enters my head. I have control over what I want to pay attention to. But I mean, if I was to predict, or let's figure out, okay, what are you gonna think in the next minute? Do you know what you're gonna think in the next minute? It's like, but it's amazing what comes in, right? It's like, or I would be on a beautiful walk someplace and enjoying the scenery, and it's like, gee, when I get home, I'm gonna have to do the dishes. Why did that thought come? Like it's like just these random things pop in, right?
Yeah.
That take us out of the moment, take us out of that present moment. And so intuitively, I think we kind of know this. I know some of the paramedics do, in the sense of, letting go of the call, not taking the last one into the next one, understanding what the zone is. What we haven't experimented with is how to get into those balanced states more often. And the more we understand what's really going on, much like with my back, we don't have to start looking at assisted suicides. We don't have to look at suicide as an option anymore. And that's my dream. That's my dream, to get the message to anybody, not necessarily the first responders or the military, because we seem to label them as, because of the nature of their work and the nature of what they're exposed to, you're not broken. Nobody's broken. Nobody's broken.
So we are giving everyone permission to let go of the thoughts they have.
Yes, 100%. Like that. I like that.
Yeah.
You have permission.
Yeah. You have permission to doubt your thoughts.
Yes. Yes.
It's just imaginary scar tissue that it's okay to let go of.
And you have permission to live.
Yeah.
You have permission to live whole and in peace.
Yeah. And the sad thing with it, with this, as you share with the assisted suicide for mental health, is like, imagine, because it's the same thing. Imagine you are so scared and believe that you have monsters under your bed when you're going to go to bed. And you're suffering so much about that, so you could actually apply to get assisted suicide, because you suffer so mentally and still believe in the illusion and the fantasy that there is monsters under the bed. And no one hearing that would buy into it, right? Now, of course not. I mean, that's just crazy. And that's the same thing with everything else. It doesn't mean that people don't suffer. It doesn't mean that people do not have challenges in life, have been in traumatic situations, have a horrible, horrendous history and experience and baggages that they try to put and take on to that wellness airline. Of course. And it's not about diminishing anyone's experience. It's about helping people to see they don't need to carry on the baggage.
Yeah. It's a choice now.
Yeah. It's a no carry-on airline.
That's right. We're going to charge you extra for every bag.
Yeah. It's super expensive per kilo. So, yeah. And there's so much hope in it when people start to see, and there's nothing to fix. It's nothing to make unbroken because it's already unbroken from the beginning, and there's no how to or instructions or anything. We just need to see the truth in what we are saying here.
Experience it. Experience.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And that's for me when we see it, like,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Oh yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I mean, it's not the same thing, right?
No. And this is where we get caught up intellectually, because we honor intellects, like we honor people that can appear to think their way out of a problem, and and we have the ability of creating unsolvable problems. The mind can create anything. And I like what Michael Neal says about a problem. He says, if it doesn't fit in a wheelbarrow, it's not a problem. It's made up.
Yep.
And really asking proper questions, am I really seeing this clearly for what it actually is? And and just asking proper questions really opens up, the avenue for something fresh and new to come in.
Yeah. Because
if I always look back at my memory for an answer, there's nothing fresh and new there. It's all stale stuff. There's not, and again, it's not to say none of that has ever happened or diminish what happened, but in that moment, you responded the way you felt it was necessarily to respond, given all the information you had. What we get trapped in is we start doing this reflective piece. I should have done something different. I could have done something different. If I had done it differently, I wouldn't be in the same situation that I am today. That is, again, that's that whirlpool of conversation, that's tornado that goes nowhere. And to realize that, yes, it happened, but that is the past. And that, and yes, maybe my intellect might dip in there periodically, but it's made of nothing, and there's no substance there. There's like, how can you point to it? So it can't fit in a wheelbarrow. The only thing that's important right now is your leaky roof, whatever's in front of you.
Yeah,
it's the only thing that's ever important.
When we worry and see problems, it's future based.
Yeah,
it's not in the present, because in the present you will handle the problem the best way you could with the resources you had. And so we need to see that, and it's so relieving.
It is, and it's. I know my clients. I often joke with my clients because they always come with me like, it's like, okay, so what's going on? It's like, oh, I got a really tough conversation I have to have tomorrow or a week from now, or I've got to go into a meeting and and the people I'm worried about the people and all this other kind of stuff. Very future based, right? And I'll just I said, well, why don't you just let Rick of tomorrow deal with that? Like, I'm just swapping my name for their name, but it's like because it's built into us already to respond in the moment. And when you're balanced, when you're in the zone, your mind, right? Like Sydney Banks says, we have a mind that we can use in two different ways. Well, a balanced mind, one of free of no thought, free of baggage, will take the best of both worlds. It will take whatever you know and something fresh and new, right? It'll take wisdom and intellect. It'll take your intuition, right? So you'll respond in real time to what's happening. If I sat down and wrote off, well, if he says this, then I can say this because I knew this happened in the past. If I play that game, there's a lot of living that's going on without me.
Yep.
Because I'm already in Monday or a Friday, whenever it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But what's on offer is the opportunity to experiment. What if you just showed up and then respond accordingly? What if you just let Rick of Friday take care of it? How would that feel? Oh, I don't know. Try it. It was try it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because there's no responsibility or in worrying and feeling bad about a possible upcoming future that you're thinking of. Planning, absolutely. If you want to plan, but don't get stuck in it.
Yeah, lay it loosely.
Yeah. And start seeing what the suffering is actually is. It's a self-made tournament, not tournament, but maybe, what do you say, like torment, not tournament.
Yeah.
Tournament. Yeah, it could be a tournament. Usually you are also the winner is you of suffering tournament. And see that we have the possibility, and you who listen, and including me and you, Rick, we have the permission to question it.
Absolutely.
And
all the time.
Yeah, question the thoughts that we have.
Yeah. Is this really true? I mean, there are some things that have served me well. You know, there's thoughts and habits, you know, like when I go cooking, you know, like I cook, I love to cook, you know. There's one thing I keep joking with my family, even though I may make spaghetti often, it's not the same spaghetti I made last week or a month ago, right? Because I'm always trying something fresh, you know, I'm always experimenting, right? So you never get the same bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah.
And really, you know, that's what life's about. That's where the secret sauce is. That's where the juice is, whatever we want to call it, is really knowing that moment by moment, you get to drink a fresh cup of coffee, you get to look at things with fresh eyes. You get to touch things with a fresh feeling to them. Because it is new. It is not the same river that you crossed yesterday. Okay? Even though it's the same cup of, same pot, the same coffee that you poured yesterday, you're actually, this one's fresh and new. It's the one that was created in this moment. Did you guys ever have the TV show Friends?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was an episode that I think it was called First Sip, and the girls were all sitting in the coffee shop there, and they all had their lattes or whatever they were going, and Phoebe, the blonde one, as everybody was just grabbed their coffees and were just going to go straight in, right? She says, stop, and you go, what? It's the first sip. It's like, what are you talking about? We're about to have the first sip, right? So it's like, so they just sort of relaxed and just let go of all their thoughts so that they could experience the first sip, right? Yeah. So it's like the babies that are born, right? We have this opportunity when we wake up is to take the first breath of the day. Yeah. You know, moment by moment by moment. Right?
Yeah. It's always the first sip.
It's always the first sip. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful put, because it's so true. And even if you heat up the old pasta from yesterday, it's not the same pasta anyway.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, I think in some ways it tastes better. But
sometimes it definitely do.
The old pasta. Yes.
Yeah. So the Unbroken Hero project that you have, yes. Tell me Tell me something about that.
Well, it's an idea that came to me, a seed of a thought. A couple of years ago, I was at a 3 Principles conference, and I was listening to a lot of the other coaches and practitioners sharing where they had been working with 3 Principles understanding in prisons and in schools and in various other really cool places, including in some in healthcare, and it just came to me sort of in I wouldn't say a lightning bolt. It was more like the call, the hero's call kind of a thing, the reluctant call, right? That you know what, enough's enough. You need to get this out to the first responders. You need to get it out to the front line. You need, how much more of this evidence of things aren't going well do you need to keep seeing? I'll be really honest. In the beginning, I didn't know if this was real or not real. Like I saw the results. I was sort of like, my intellect going in, because it's a very evidence-based world.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see the research. They want to see what's backing it up. What troubles me is when I look at the research that they're using, a lot of it isn't 100%. Like, there are so many programs out there, all different.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are helping and some of them are not. And I've talked to clients and people that are like responders that are in treatment programs. They'll go so far into a treatment program and not get any benefit, and so they're off to another one. And they'll try that for 3 months, and then they're off to another one. Mm. And they only have a year. After a year, they're on their own. They have to figure out something on their own.
Mm.
So they have to get some kind of help within that parameter of what their benefits package covers. So there's a lot of pressure. So they're always looking for, okay, so what's the best evidence out there?
Mm.
And I'm starting to see evidence now from some of the practitioners. Dr. Giles Croft from NHA released his study, and they had 20 other modalities that were studied in the mental health wellness field, and his reached the top for the highest point difference, because they use a logarithm and a chart to measure people going into the program and then going out of the program. It's sanctioned by the Psychiatrists Association or some. I'm not sure what the branch is. But they measure people and measure them out. And that's the only way the research can be beneficial, because you have to see a result. And his program reached the top, and it's all principles based, which to me is exciting that we're starting to get that kind of research, even though the understanding has been around since the 70s. And many psychiatrists around the world and physio and therapists and coaches is growing worldwide now. Like, it's really starting to, people are saying, there's a better way. There's another way. Right. So we're getting there. So I took the call, and this unbroken hero sort of came into my mind. It just seemed like a great little title to kind of anchor to the fact that we're not broken.
Yeah.
Like, we're actually operating perfectly. Like, what you're feeling right now is your mind saying, this is how I work. This is it. You may not like what's going on in the moment, but that's how it works. That's how the machine works, right? That's how the car runs. And I recently bought a hybrid car, and so it's half electric, half gas. And so part of having that car, it's not a plug-in, so it charges itself while it drives, which is kind of cool, because that's kind of how our minds work. So it's got this great gauge that tells me when I'm on electricity, and it says the gauge that tells me when I'm using too much gas, and I have full control over it. And so the game is how low of the kilometers per 100 can I go? So I can feel when the engine comes on, and it's my signal to back away, and let it charge up the electricity. And that's how our minds work. Our minds are working that way all the time. It's telling you when you need to back away, when you need to let go, right? So it's all signals, and it's just a question of really getting in tune to that, because it's working perfectly. It's not broken. You're just interpreting it wrong.
Yeah.
You're on the gas too much, thinking, well, if I go faster, maybe that will be better.
Maybe then it starts to go on electric.
Yeah.
But
so it's really, again, it's just getting down to it. So yes, you are not broken, period.
The funny thing is, I connected with Dr. Gilles Croft today on LinkedIn.
No way.
Yeah. And you were saying his name, and I was like, switching over to the web browser. Oh, we're talking about the same person here.
He's a wonderful individual. Wonderful.
Yeah. I did see a video on LinkedIn that came up on my LinkedIn profile, and I was like, and I listened into it, and I was like,
and that research just came out recently, so he shared it. And
okay.
It's beautiful. I read it. I read all the other. There was 20 other organizations. They were part of it, and he was at the top.
Yeah. Good. So, Rick, if people would like to come in contact with you, what is the best way, and what's on offer?
What's on offer? Well, there's always something on offer, right? 2 ears, one mouth. So I listen twice as much. Today's a bit of an exception, but only because we have to. It's part of a show, right? We have to talk. But I know one of the things that people often point to me or tell me that they appreciate is how good of a listener I am. And so that's what I offer. I offer a couple of years and no judgment, and I want to hear your story. And the best way to really get a hold of me right now, I think, is probably through a search in Facebook. You can search my name. There's all sorts of stuff that'll come up from Google. I've been around for a few years, so there's been a few things that have gone through. Some of it's my past work with the ambulance service, and some of the highlights of my career. I've been recognized a few times, honored with some of my achievements and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean anything to what I'm doing now. I really just want to help people understand that hybrid mind of theirs, and how with a little bit of practice, a little bit of guidance, some mentoring, we can have it work for us instead of what it looks like it's working against us. And peace of mind and a life full of joy and happiness.
Yeah, wonderful. And the Unbroken Hero Project is mainly for people in first responders, and it's focused in that direction. It just helps me, fill the web pages with information that's more pertaining to that. So I'll tell you, one of the paradigms that I think needs to also change is, because you're in the service, and I know some people are going to listen to this in a different way, doesn't make you special. Doesn't make you unique. And I know
living in that world, we've had many offers of help, and people have turned their back on the help because of, you don't understand the work that we do.
Mm.
And I think we need to relax that a little bit. It's like, yes, your work is different. My sister is a police officer. I know her work is different. I have friends in the military. Their work is different than somebody that goes to a factory or goes into an office job. Yes, they're exposed to the things that people want to ignore that is actually going on. They don't want to hear all the stuff, although the news loves to tell you all about it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of uniqueness in the work that you do, but you as an individual are not unique. We are all built exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Unbroken and in whole. Right?
Yeah.
It's only our thinking that keeps removing us away from that space. So yes, the work makes you unique, but you as an individual, even though you were looking differently, although I like your little sporting beard there, the inside of us, right? We're all the same.
Yeah.
We're really all the same.
Yeah, and that's the good thing.
Oh, it makes it easier.
Yeah, much easier. And but we think differently usually, that we're not the same because we have our baggage and so on, and history and different kind of situations and so on. And yeah, but that's a good thing that we function the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the principles understanding is that it starts with that basis.
Yeah.
And everywhere else, and this is, I love Christine Heath and Judy Sedgman, their program Psychology Has It Backwards, because they look at the symptoms. They're always looking at symptoms, and then they're trying to correct the symptoms, not going upstream enough.
Mm-hmm.
Where the principles gets up to the source and starts at the place where it all starts. And that's because, this is how it all works.
Yeah.
And the more we understand how it works, we can now swim in the ocean or in the river or whatever, and not drown.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So and we don't have to look at, well, geez, you're different, so we have to give you something different, and you're different, we have to give you something different, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of work and effort.
Yeah, and once again, innocently, because as long as we believe it is that way, we will start treating people that way.
Yeah, and not to say they haven't helped people, and thank goodness. People are still getting help, but there's got to be something more, because and this is my only criteria, is it should be the same for everything. Like, if we have to create unique programs because individuals are unique, we're creating dozens and dozens and dozens. And then we got one person going here, he tries it for a while, and goes in here and tries it for a while. And finally, he finds something that kind of clicks for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, okay, that one's good. That one's good.
Mm.
But if we get rid of the uniqueness and just say, okay, let's just start with one ground base, one understanding to start with.
Mm.
Let's experiment there. The understanding is we're not broken. The understanding is it's a thought, we're always living in the thinking of our feelings in the moment. And if I believe that they are true, I'm going to act according to that.
Mm.
So for me, understanding that is my challenge, to recognize and notice it when it's happening. I have the free will now of changing that. Oh, I'm now responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Stephen Covey's play on, I'm not only responsible, I'm also response able instead of reactive. Yeah. So
totally different approach and experience also. Lovely. I'm gonna put also the links in the show notes.
Sure.
To your website and to your Facebook, so on.
Yeah.
Lovely. Would you like to say some last words to our listeners?
I thought at first you said lost words.
Not lost. We lost them. Well, that's going to be hard to say those words because we lost them. So
we lost them. I'm sorry.
Go for the last.
Yeah, go for the last. You have the last word. Oh, it's just thinking about my wife. I don't know what the magic words would be. I don't know what would, the right word that would land on somebody, and make them turn to look the other way. I don't know what those words are. Because if I do, I'd be saying them a lot more and a lot louder, right? But I know there's a lot to be offered when we start to explore and get curious about what really is going on between our two ears. And so I encourage people to really take a journey inward. It doesn't have to be with me or anybody else or other, but just, there's so much out there. Even science are starting to, the quantum physics in the field, all pointing towards answers are being more inside than outside. So I just encourage people to explore what's on offer when we look towards our inner selves, as opposed to trying to manage the circumstances around us, thinking if I do that better, my life would be better. And it's got a little bit of backwardsness there. So that's pretty well all I got to say, I guess.
Tack för att du har lyssnat på det här avsnittet. Är det så att du uppskattar den här podcasten så får du självklart dela den vidare till dem du tänker kan ha ett behov av att lyssna på den. Det finns också en möjlighet för dig att boka in sig på ett kostnadsfritt coachingsamtal med mig. Det finns inga förbehåll att du måste ha tankar om att bli coachad, utan du kanske har en frågeställning bara så här: det här skulle vara intressant att bolla med Daniel. Så kan jag hjälpa dig på något sätt så gör jag det mer än gärna. Skicka frågan till mig på daniel@humanchange.se. På hemsidan hittar du även videokursen Nyckeln till stressfrihet. Det är en videokurs som jag tillsammans med Angelica Almqvist har skapat. Och det är ett program då för dig som vill ha ett stressfriare liv. Och några vanliga effekter som man kan se efter den här är då minskad stress, oro, frustration och psykisk ohälsa. Ett ökat lugn, välbefinnande, sinnesro med mera. Tack!